I mean, it was horrible. This thing had been filled with garbage. We found 2 dead cats in there. I've got a picture, a moving picture of a cat that came up to where we were working, and it stood there and looked at us for a bit, and then it just turned and walked off like, you know, what are you idiots doing there? But anyway, in January 6, 1982, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I found the Arca of the Covenant. Right? You would not believe the amount of stone and dirt and everything we had moved. God kept our interest up by thinking that just any minute we'd find it. You know, for all of that time. Usually the carrot doesn't work for that long a period of time. I think you know about holding a carrot in front of something to get it to move. So anyway, we found it. Now, I hadn't thought anything about the crucifixion site. Like everyone else, I thought it was up by that Muslim graveyard on top of that cliff. And in fact, I went up there looking one day for it, and a couple of Muslims kind of helped me off of out of the place. My feet touched the ground about every 10 feet. But anyway, I didn't see any evidence up there. But as we dug down the face of that cliff, we found those 3 cutouts. Now, folks, there was only one crucifixion site in Jerusalem, and that is it. Not only that, the place where they crucified people was the same place where they stoned people, right? There's a very strong tradition, in fact, there's a big church built up there, where they supposedly stoned Stephen. You remember the story in the Bible? And he said, I beheld heaven, he says, I beheld heaven open, and I saw the Son of Man, or Jesus, sitting at the right hand of God. And there's a special, this is a special place up there. There's a book by that title for sale in there. And I suggest you get it. It's a very good book. So anyway, when I found the cutouts, we were digging along the cliff face, but the dirt out here was beginning to threaten to fall in on us and bury us. So I went to the left, dug a shaft straight down, and you know where that little bench, that curved bench is sitting out there in that pillar? By the way, those are pagan symbols. What they're doing in there in a Christian place is amazing. But it's a symbol of sun worship, and the pillar is a phallic symbol, fertility symbol. They're not right over the Ark of the Covenant, but I'm surprised they are even that close. So as we tunneled along at the quarry floor, at the base of the wall, I found the cross hole. And I worked around and found some more cross holes 4 feet lower on the real quarry floor. I thought this was the quarry floor, but actually it was a kind of a bench-like thing where they hadn't taken the last set of blocks out as they quarried their way down. And so anyway, I prayed, Lord, where shall I go now? Now, we had found the crucifixion place, and I was quite excited about that. But we were looking for the Ark of the Covenant. And if I had had my way, I would have found the Ark of the Covenant, and I would not have found the crucifixion site, because I wasn't looking for it. As always, God had more in mind than I had in mind. As more than any of us humans, he says that he will give us more than we can ask or think. And I found that to be very true, and of course you will find that to be very true too, and some of you already have, those that are sharing things with other people. Because today God is taking a strong hand in finishing his work. Anyway, I was impressed to break right through the cliff. Not this cliff, but one that looked every bit as solid. Right? Well, I'm dumb, but I didn't think I was that dumb. Okay. So anyway, I kept looking around for a place to get in that cliff. I knew there were caves in there because honeybees were coming out of cracks and flying in. So they had their nests in there. So anyway, my youngest son, he says, "Dad, have you prayed about this?" And I said, "Yes. You know, I should have prayed with my sons. We look back and we see mistakes we've made." But he asked, and we did pray together at night and morning, but I should have prayed right there. Anyway, he said, "Did you pray about this?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, did you get any indication of what to do?" I said, "Yes. I'm supposed to break right through that cliff." And he says, "Well, let's do it." And I said, "No way. That's stupid. I'm not doing it." So we worked for 3 or 4 more days, and it was time to leave the next day. And my oldest son was down with me, and we were handing the tools out to my youngest son to store them. And my older son is rather a quiet person. He said, "Dad, did you pray about this?" I said, "Sure, yes I did." He said, "Well," I said, "I was impressed to break through that cliff right there." And he said, "Well, let's do it." And I said, "No, that's stupid. I am not beating my brains out against a cliff." He says, "Well, Dad, pardon my saying so, but I've seen you do stupider things than that." I said, "Okay, tell Ronnie to pass the tools back down." Now, if you look carefully, you'll see a crack right here. All right, it's not much of one, but it is a fault line through that stone. So we went 18 inches over to this side, took our hammers and chisels and started marking the stone up and down and up and down. Finally, a big chunk popped out of there. Pushed it off to the side, looked back in the bottom. There was a small, dark hole about that big. Didn't look very promising at all. I had my son hand me the flashlight. We had them sitting where we could see. This was all down in a tunnel. And so I put it up to that hole, and there was a big cave chamber back behind there. Have you ever had goosebumps and all of that sort of thing just overwhelm you? Well, that's what happened to me. It didn't take us very long to make the hole big enough to get in. I thought the Ark of the Covenant would be sitting right there. It wasn't. So since we had to leave the next morning, we plugged that hole. We came back to the surface, plugged the hole, fixed everything up so nobody could tell where we had been, and left. I had to go home, work, save up some more money, come back. But eventually, I found the Ark of the Covenant, and it was in a chamber that I would not have bothered going in, just like I wouldn't have bothered breaking through the wall. My 2 sons had gotten very ill in 1982. I sent one of them home Christmas Eve, the other one home New Year's Eve. I owed the hotel $300. I had no money at all. As a friendly Arab let me eat at his restaurant. And that, folks, to me is humiliating. Now, there are some things that I'm not comfortable with, and I was experiencing several of them. That trip, I decided that I was going to find the Ark of the Covenant or die in the hole. This may sound a little melodramatic, but I was humiliated. I couldn't pay my bill at the hotel. I'd rather be dead than in a situation like that. And that's not good logic. So don't go down and do likewise on that one. So anyway, the little Arab guy that was letting us eat at his restaurant, he was a full-grown man, but he was about that tall. and small, petite. So as we went through this cave system, he would crawl into the chambers, and I'd give him a light, and he'd shine it around, and I'd peek through to see if it looked like anything in there. So we did this over and over, and we came to this one hole after we had, I mean, you wouldn't believe where all we had gone in that cave. However, how many of you have ever been inside a big cave? The tunnels and chambers and all. Hey, you know what I'm saying? We had just been all over the place, up and down, different levels, and at this point in time we had gone about 45 feet down and then back up, and here this hole was in the wall, about that big around, and there was a stalactite hanging right down the middle of it. It's the only stalactite I had seen in the cave that wasn't just little ones. This was a big one, and I have it in my collection of things. So I broke it off, made the hole big enough for him to get in, and he was crawling in there, and I started to hand him the light so he could do what we had been doing, you know, several days. He came tearing out of there. His eyes were big as human eyes can get, and he said, "What's in there? What's in there? I'm not going back in there." And I said, "Well, what did you see?" He said, "I didn't see anything." And I thought, well, okay. Now, he had been in tighter places than that and had not responded that way. So I got this little beam of light, you know, in a very dark place here. And I thought, that is divine terror. You know, that's supernatural terror. So I figured there's got to, that is either where the Ark of the Covenant is, or it's the way to get to it, one or the other. And God doesn't want this fella to know where it is. So anyway, he said, he just said, I must get out of here. So off he went. So I made the hole big enough for me to get in. I got in there, and folks, it was full of rocks, bigger than these here, up to within 18 inches or so of the ceiling. If this young man hadn't been terrorized and come scooting out of there like he did, I would not have gone in that place. But who needs rocks? We've been moving thousands of them for 3 years. So anyway, I crawled in there with the flashlight, and I crawled around on top of the rocks, and I shined the light down between the cracks in the rock, and there a gold, flat gold thing reflected back at me. So I moved over and shined down through another. There was two reflections, one here, one there, and one over here. So I knew it was a flat gold top. And I thought, the Ark of the Covenant. I forgot about the cherubims, you know, sitting on top. They'd have been poking up through if that was the top of the mercy seat. But anyway, I started moving these rocks, and I stuck them everywhere I could. By the time I got down to that gold surface, I had them behind my shoulders, leaning back against them, and it was the table of showbread. Well, hey, that's not a bad thing, huh? But anyway, I was looking for the Ark of the Covenant, and it was only then that I took time to carefully examine the rest of the chamber. See, I had just crawled in, took a quick look, and started checking down under the rocks. So as I moved the flashlight along the wall, I saw a stone box sitting against the wall about this low, this much space between it and the ceiling. The lid was broke, slid around, and right above it was a crack with dark brown looking material at the bottom on the bottom of this crack. And I was able to see the top of the lid of the box. On both sides of the broken pieces was more of this brown stuff. All of a sudden I realized I was sitting in front of the Ark of the Covenant. and that Christ's blood had to come down.
Jesu blod är ditt ner på vattnet. Varför försöker du?
I had never heard anybody preach anything about that sort of possibility. Never. And it was too much for me. When I regained consciousness and looked at my watch, again, 45 minutes had passed from the time I crawled in the chamber, because I figured I'd find the Arca of the Covenant in there. I wanted to know what time it was. So anyway, it was 2 o'clock when I entered the chamber. And after I regained consciousness, it was 2:45. I couldn't see down in there, but I knew what it was.
Later, Ron Wyatt would confirm that this was the Ark of the Covenant, and that the blood on the mercy seat was from someone who had only one human parent. There were no paternal chromosomes except for one Y chromosome. Jesus was God's only begotten Son, just as he said he was. The Bible prophesied that Christ's blood would be sprinkled on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, but as it was to be kept secret until our time, it was partially, but not totally, hidden in symbols. Matthew recorded an earthquake at the cross, which formed a crack in the ground below it. John tells us that when the Roman soldier pierced the side of Christ, blood and water ran out. The blood and water apparently ran down the earthquake crack. The prophet Isaiah wrote that Jesus, when he was bruised and broken, would sprinkle many nations. Jesus himself said, when he initiated the communion service, that he would enter into a covenant with all people through his blood, the blood of the covenant. The blood would confirm this covenant. When Jesus became the sacrifice, he sprinkled his blood himself, and thus fulfilled the role of the high priest. He then became both high priest and victim. Paul told us that Jesus confirmed the covenant in the same way as Moses confirmed the old covenant with the Israelites. In Exodus, we can read how the first covenant was confirmed. In his letter to the Hebrews, Paul writes how Jesus confirmed the everlasting covenant in the same way that Moses confirmed the covenant between the people and God. Whereupon neither the First Testament was dedicated without blood. For when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves and of goats, with water, scarlet wool, and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book and all the people, saying, This is the blood of the testament, which God hath enjoined unto you. He took blood and water, and sprinkled it upon the words of the covenant. This symbolized 2 things: that these very words, written in the book, are the covenant, and the blood symbolized forgiveness for breaking that covenant, as the blood from the sacrificed animal was always a symbol of Christ. Scarlet wool and hyssop represented the true mission of the sacrificial lamb. In the Bible, we're told that wool symbolizes purity and scarlet symbolizes sin. So just as the wool became scarlet, thus Christ, the innocent Lamb of God, took upon himself our sin. In the scripture, hyssop is a symbol of cleansing. Jesus took our sins to cleanse us. From this ceremony, we know exactly what to expect in the antitype. According to the type, we can expect Jesus to confirm the true covenant by sprinkling his blood and water over what now makes up the covenant, while simultaneously offering himself to cleanse people from their sins. These people he confirmed the covenant with were therefore asked by Christ to keep the very words of that covenant. John reveals to us a secret. He tells us that the blood and water is here on earth as a testimony. And there are 3 that bear witness in earth, the Spirit, and the water, and the blood. And these 3 agree in one. If we receive the witness of men, the witness of God is greater. For this is the witness of God, which he hath testified of his Son. The prophet Isaiah is connecting Jesus' death on the cross to a time where he will sprinkle many nations. Isaiah continues on to say that this will one day be revealed and will leave even the world's rulers utterly speechless. Thus he will sprinkle many nations. Kings will shut their mouths on account of him, for what had not been told them they will see, and what they had not heard they will understand. When the prophet Daniel was given the task of prophesying of the coming Messiah, he made a clear reference to the mission of Jesus: to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. It's also written that when Jesus died, the curtain between the holy place and the most holy place was ripped in two, but the Ark of the Covenant was not there. Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. Right before the Babylonians besieged Jerusalem and destroyed the temple, the Ark was hidden. The very Ark of the Covenant, with the testimony of God, or the law, that the people had broken, and that we need atoning for. God knew where Jesus was to suffer and die for humanity, and 600 years before the crucifixion, he hid the Ark right under the Golgotha escarpment.